Jake Morrison cursed under his breath as red warning lights flashed across his ship's control panel. The navigation system had failed again, just like it had twice this month. His cargo ship, the Lucky Strike, was old and falling apart, but it was all he could afford. "Come on, you piece of junk," Jake muttered, hitting the console with his fist. The lights kept flashing. He was lost somewhere in the outer rim, far from any major trade routes. His fuel was running low and he needed to land soon. The scanner showed a small planet nearby. According to his computer, it was called Kepler 442c. The record said it was empty and safe to land on. Jake had no choice. He pointed his ship toward the planet and hoped for the best. The landing was rough. Jake's ship skidded across rocky ground before finally stopping near some large boulders. Steam rose from the damaged engines. Jake grabbed his toolkit and emergency supplies, then stepped outside to check the damage. The planet looked dead. Red dirt stretched in every direction under a pale orange sky. Strange rock formations rose up like twisted fingers. The air was thin but breathable. Jake pulled his jacket tighter as a cold wind blew across the empty landscape. Jake spent 2 hours working on his engines. The main power coupling was fried, and he needed replacement parts. He looked around at the barren wasteland and sighed. This was going to take a while. A glint of metal caught his eye in the distance. Jake grabbed his binoculars and looked closer. There was something there, maybe a crashed ship. If he was lucky, it might have the parts he needed. Jake walked toward the wreckage, his boots crunching on the rocky ground. As he got closer, he could see it was definitely a ship, but not like any he had seen before. The hull was smooth and curved, almost like it had grown instead of being built. Strange symbols were carved into the metal. The ship had crashed hard. One side was completely crushed, and debris was scattered everywhere. Jake started looking through the wreckage for anything useful. Most of the technology was too alien to understand, but some basic components might work in his ship. A small sound made him freeze. It was barely a whisper, but it sounded like crying. Jake listened carefully. There it was again, coming from behind a pile of twisted metal. Jake moved slowly toward the sound. He did not want to scare whatever was making it. As he rounded the debris pile, he saw her. A small figure was huddled against a piece of wreckage. At first, Jake thought it was a human child, but then he saw the pointed ears and silver hair. The child's skin was pale blue, and her clothes were torn and dirty. She had a cut on her arm that was bleeding purple blood. The alien child looked up at Jake with large, frightened eyes. She said something in a language he did not understand. Her voice was soft and musical, even though she was clearly scared. Jake held up his hands to show he meant no harm. "Hey there," he said gently. "It's okay. I won't hurt you." The child tilted, her head studying him. She pointed to herself and said, "Aria." Then she pointed to Jake with a questioning look. "Jake," he said, pointing to himself. "My name is Jake." Aria tried to say his name, but it came out more like Yake. She managed, a small smile despite her fear. Jake could see that Aria was hurt and hungry. Her lips were dry, and she kept looking at his supply pack. The smart thing would be to walk away. Getting involved with aliens could mean big trouble with the Imperial authorities, but looking at this scared, injured child, Jake could not just leave her. He opened his pack and pulled out a ration bar and a water bottle. Aria's eyes went wide when she saw the food. Jake unwrapped the bar and handed it to her. She took it carefully, as if she could not believe he was really giving it to her. Aria ate the food quickly, like she had not eaten in days. Jake gave her small sips of water and pulled out his basic medical kit. He cleaned the cut on her arm and wrapped it with bandages. Aria winced, but did not pull away. When Jake was done, Aria touched the bandage and then touched his hand. She said something in her language that sounded like, "Thank you." Aria stood up and tugged on Jake's sleeve. She pointed toward a cluster of rocks in the distance and started walking. Jake hesitated for a moment, then followed her. His ship could wait a little longer. As they walked, Aria chattered in her musical language. Jake could not understand the words, but her tone was excited, like she was telling him about something important. Every few steps, she would look back to make sure he was following. They climbed over several large rocks and down into a hidden valley. Jake's jaw dropped at what he saw. There were about 30 aliens like Arya, all with the same pointed ears and silver hair. They had built shelters from salvaged materials and growing plants that Jake had never seen before. When the aliens saw Jake, they quickly moved to protect their children. Several adults stepped forward, and Jake could see they were ready to fight if necessary. But Arya ran to a tall female alien and spoke rapidly, pointing back at Jake. The tall alien walked toward Jake. She moved with the grace of a dancer and the confidence of a soldier. When she spoke, her English was accented but clear. "I am Commander Lyra Starweaver," she said. "My niece tells me you helped her. Why would a human do this?" Jake looked around at the hidden camp, at the scared faces watching him, at little Arya, who was now standing beside a woman who must be her mother. These people were refugees hiding from something terrible. "Because she needed help," Jake said simply, "and because it was the right thing to do." Lyra studied his face for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "Come," she said. "We have much to talk about." As Jake followed Lyra into the camp, he had no idea that this simple act of kindness would change everything. In 1 week, Imperial soldiers would arrive, and nothing would ever be the same again. Jake spent his first night in the Zalani camp learning things that amazed him. The aliens called themselves Zalani, and they were nothing like what Imperial propaganda had taught him. They were not savage or primitive. They were gentle people, with incredible knowledge about living things. Commander Lyra showed Jake around the camp as the sun set. The Zalani had created shelters that seemed to grow from the ground itself. Walls made of thick vines provided protection from the wind, while bioluminescent plants gave off soft light when darkness fell. "How do you make the plants do this?" Jake asked, touching a wall that felt warm and alive. "We do not make them do anything," Lyra explained. "We ask, and they choose to help us. All living things can communicate if you know how to listen." Jake watched a Zalani woman place her hands on a small plant. The plant began to grow, its leaves spreading wide to create shade for the children playing beneath it. The woman smiled and whispered something to the plant before walking away. Arya's mother approached them. She was beautiful, with kind eyes and silver hair that seemed to shimmer in the evening light. But Jake could see worry lines on her face, and her clothes were patched and worn. "This is Dr. Maya Moonwhisper," Lyra said. "She is our best scientist and Arya's mother." Maya looked at Jake with suspicion. "Why are you really here, human? What do you want from us?" "I don't want anything," Jake said. "My ship broke down and I was looking for parts. I found Arya by accident." "Accidents do not exist," Maya said coldly. "The Empire has tricks. They send spies who pretend to be kind." Jake understood her fear. "Look, I know you have no reason to trust me, but I'm not working for the Empire. I'm just a trader trying to make a living." Arya ran up to them and grabbed Jake's hand. She said something to her mother in their musical language. Maya's expression softened slightly as she listened to her daughter. "Arya says you were gentle when you fixed her cut," Maya said. "She says your thoughts feel warm and safe." "Your daughter can read minds?" Jake asked. "Not exactly," Lyra explained. "Zalani children are naturally empathic. They can sense emotions and intentions. Arya would know if you meant us harm." Over the next few days, Jake learned more about the Zalani and their amazing abilities. They could make plants grow faster, communicate with animals, and create organic technology that seemed almost magical. Their tools were alive, growing and adapting to whatever task was needed. Maya showed Jake how they created food from seemingly dead soil. She placed seeds in the red dirt and sang to them in her language. Within hours, the seeds sprouted into plants heavy with nutritious fruits and vegetables. "The planet is not dead like your records say," Maya explained. "Life is sleeping here, waiting for someone to wake it up." In return, Jake taught the Zalani about human survival techniques he had learned during his time in the military before becoming a trader. He showed them how to build better shelters using salvaged materials and how to set up watch posts to spot danger from far away. "You were a soldier?" Lyra asked as Jake demonstrated how to make a simple radio from spare parts. "For 5 years," Jake said. "I got tired of taking orders and went into trading instead. Figured I could see the galaxy and make some money at the same time." "Did you ever fight aliens?" Maya asked quietly. Jake stopped working and looked at her. Yes, I was told they were dangerous, that they wanted to destroy human colonies. I believed what I was told back then. And now? Maya asked. Jake looked. Around the peaceful camp, at Arya playing with other children, at the Zalani working together to build their new home. Now I think I was lied to about a lot of things. As the days passed, Jake found himself becoming part of the community. He helped repair their makeshift shelters and taught the younger Zalani some basic human phrases. In return, they shared their food and showed him wonders he had never imagined. Arya became his constant companion. She followed him everywhere, chattering in her mix of Zalani and broken English. She showed him how to make the bioluminescent. Plants glow brighter by humming to them, and how to find water by listening to the plants that grew near underground streams. Uncle Jake, Arya called him now, having learned the English word from Maya. Uncle Jake, watch this! Arya placed her small hands on a withered plant. She closed her eyes and concentrated. Slowly, the plant began to straighten and grow green again. When she opened her eyes, the plant was healthy and strong. How did you do that? Jake asked, amazed. I asked it what was wrong, Arya said simply. It was sad because it was thirsty. So I showed it where to find water with its roots. Maya watched her daughter with pride and worry. Arya is very gifted, even for a Zalani child. That is part of why the Empire wants us so badly. What do you mean? Jake asked. Maya and Lyra exchanged glances. Finally, Lyra spoke. The Empire does not just want to kill us. They want to study us, to learn how our abilities work. They think they can use our biotechnology to make weapons. Weapons? Jake felt sick at the thought. Imagine plants that could strangle enemies, Maya said sadly. Animals that could be controlled like machines. Living ships that could repair themselves in battle. That is what the Empire sees when they look at us. Jake was quiet for a long time. He thought about the Imperial propaganda he had believed, about the wars he had fought, about all the times he had been told that aliens were the enemy. Why are you telling me this? He finally asked. Because Arya trusts you, Maya said. And because I am starting to trust you too. That evening, Jake sat with Maya by the soft light of the bioluminescent plants. They talked about their lives before this place. Maya told him about her research on Zalani homeworld, how she had been working to develop new ways to help plants grow in harsh environments. I wanted to help feed people, she said. When food becomes scarce, beings fight wars. I thought if everyone had enough to eat, maybe there would be peace. Jake told her about his childhood on a farming colony, how his family had lost their land to imperial taxes, how he had joined the military because he had no other choice. I never wanted to be a soldier, he admitted. I just wanted to help my family. But the military taught me that some people were worth more than others. It took me years to realize that was wrong. Maya moved closer to him. What made you realize it? Jake thought about it. Meeting your daughter, I guess. Looking into her eyes and seeing just a scared kid who needed help. It doesn't matter what species she is. She's just a child. Maya smiled for the first time since Jake had arrived. You have a good heart, Jake Morrison. As they sat together under the alien stars, Jake felt something he had not felt in years. He felt like he belonged somewhere. These people had accepted him despite everything the Empire had taught them about humans. They had shown him kindness and trust. Jake looked at Maya's face in the soft light. She was beautiful, but more than that, she was kind and intelligent and brave. He found himself wanting to protect her and Arya, to be part of their family. But even as these feelings grew, Jake knew that danger was coming. The Zalani were refugees, which meant someone was hunting them. And if the Empire found this place, all the kindness and trust in the galaxy would not be enough to save them. Jake made a decision that night as he watched Maya tend to the living lights of their camp. Whatever came next, he would not abandon these people. They had given him something precious, a sense of purpose and belonging. He would not let the Empire take that away. Little did Jake know that in just a few days, his commitment would be tested in ways he could never imagine. Jake was teaching Arya how to use a simple radio when the alarm started. It was not a loud sound, but a low humming that seemed to come from the plants themselves. Every Zalani in the camp immediately stopped what they were doing and looked up at the sky. "What is that?" Jake asked, setting down the radio. Lyra appeared beside them, her face grim. "The sensor plants have detected ships approaching the system. Large ships." Jake felt his stomach drop. "Imperial ships?" "Most likely," Lyra said. "We need to prepare for the worst." The camp erupted into organized activity. The Zalani moved quickly, but calmly, like they had practiced this many times before. Children were gathered into the safest shelters while adults began packing essential supplies. Maya ran to Jake and Arya. Her face was pale and her hands were shaking. "They found us," she whispered. "Somehow, they found us." Jake stood up and put his hands on her shoulders. "How long do we have?" "The sensor plants can detect ships from very far away," Lyra said, joining them. "Maybe 6 or 7 hours before they reach the planet." "Then we have time to run," Jake said. "My ship is repaired. We can evacuate some people." Lyra shook her head sadly. "Your ship is too small. It might carry 10 people at most. We are 32, including the children." Maya knelt down beside Arya and spoke to her in their language. Arya's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded bravely. Then Maya turned to Jake. "Take Arya and run," Maya said. "Get her away from here, please." "No!" Arya said in English, grabbing Jake's arm. "No, leave! Mama, no, leave, family!" Jake looked at the scared child, then at Maya's desperate face, then at the Zalani families around them. These people had become his family, too. How could he just abandon them? "There has to be another way," Jake said. "What about fighting? Do you have any weapons?" "We are not warriors," Lyra said. "We have some basic tools, but nothing that could stop Imperial soldiers." Jake thought about his cargo ship. "What about my mining equipment? I've got industrial lasers that could be converted into weapons, and I know Imperial tactics from my military service." "You would stay and fight with us?" Maya asked, surprise in her voice. "These are my people now," Jake said simply. "I'm not leaving." Lyra studied Jake's face carefully. "If you help us fight, you will become an enemy of the Empire. They will hunt you for the rest of your life." Jake had already thought about that. His old life as a traitor was over anyway. The moment he decided to help the Zalani, he had chosen a new path. "Then I guess I better make sure we win," Jake said. The next few hours were busy with preparation. Jake showed the Zalani how to convert his mining lasers into defensive weapons. The equipment was heavy and powerful, designed to cut through solid rock. Against Imperial armor, it would be very effective. Maya worked on her own preparations. She had been keeping a secret from the others. Her research had gone much further than anyone knew. She had developed biotechnology that could create living armor and weapons, but she had been afraid to use it. "This is dangerous," Maya explained to Jake as she showed him strange pods growing in a hidden part of the camp. "The living technology bonds with the user. For Zalani, this is natural. But no human has ever tried it. What would happen to me?" Jake asked. "I do not know," Maya admitted. "You could become stronger and faster, able to heal from injuries quickly, or the bonding could kill you." Jake looked at the pods, which pulsed with soft light like heartbeats. "If it gives us a better chance to protect everyone, I'll try it." Maya shook her head. "It is too risky. I will not lose you too." Before Jake could argue, Lyra called for everyone to gather. The sensor plants had detected more details about the approaching ships. The news was not good. 3 Imperial destroyers, Lyra announced, plus troop transports. "This is not a patrol. This is a full military operation." One of the older Zalani spoke up. "How did they find us? We were so careful." Lyra's face was dark with anger. "Someone betrayed us. Someone who knew where we were. Hiding gave our location to the Empire." The camp fell silent. The idea that one of their own people had sold them out was almost too horrible to believe. "Who would do such a thing?" Maya asked. "Someone who was offered enough money," Lyra said bitterly. "Or someone whose family was threatened. The Empire has many ways to make people cooperate." Jake felt rage building in his chest. These gentle people had done nothing wrong except try to survive. They had fled their home, lost friends and family, and now someone had sold them out to the very people who wanted to destroy them. "Who's leading the Imperial forces?" Jake asked. Lyra checked her instruments. "The flagship is the..." Dominator, that means General Kane Bishop is in command. Jake's blood ran cold. He knew that name. Kane Bishop was known throughout the military as the Cleaner. He specialized in wiping out alien settlements quickly and completely. Bishop believed that non-humans were a disease that needed to be cured. I've heard of him, Jake said quietly. He doesn't take prisoners. The weight of their situation settled over the camp like a heavy blanket. They were facing overwhelming odds against one of the Empire's most ruthless commanders. Even with Jake's help and Maya's biotechnology, their chances were very small. Arya tugged on Jake's sleeve. "Uncle Jake scared?" she asked in her broken English. Jake knelt down to her level. He was terrified, but he could not let her know that. "A little bit," he said honestly. "But I'm going to protect you and your mama. I promise." Arya nodded solemnly, then hugged him tight. "Arya, protect Uncle Jake too," she said. As the sun began to set, the Zalani made their final preparations. The sensor plants confirmed that the Imperial ships would arrive in about 2 hours. There was no more time for planning or doubt. Jake checked his converted mining lasers one last time. The weapons were crude but powerful. If he could get into position and use his knowledge of Imperial tactics, he might be able to cause enough damage to make the enemy think twice. Maya stood beside one of her biotechnology pods, fear and determination warring in her eyes. "If we are going to use the living technology, we must do it now," she said. "It takes time to complete the bonding process." Jake looked around the camp one last time. He saw families holding each other, children trying to be brave, and adults preparing to fight for their lives. These people were counting on him. "Do it," Jake said. Maya nodded and touched the pod. It opened like a flower, revealing a mass of silvery organic material that seemed to move with its own life. "Place your hands inside," she instructed. Jake took a deep breath and plunged his hands into the pod. Immediately, he felt something alive flowing up his arms. It was warm and strange, but not painful. The silvery material spread across his skin like liquid metal, forming a second skin that enhanced every movement. "How do you feel?" Maya asked. Jake flexed his fingers, amazed at how responsive the living armor was. He felt stronger, faster, more aware of everything around him. "Like I could take on the whole Empire," he said. Maya smiled sadly. "Let us hope you do not have to." In the distance, the first Imperial ships appeared as bright stars against the darkening sky. The battle for Kepler 442c was about to begin. The Imperial ships arrived like falling stars, their engines lighting up the night sky. Jake watched through his binoculars as 3 massive destroyers took position above the planet. Each ship was the size of a small city, bristling with weapons, and carrying hundreds of soldiers. "They're deploying landing craft," Jake reported to Lyra. "Looks like 6 shuttles from each ship. That's about 200 soldiers total." Lyra nodded grimly. "General Bishop is being careful. He could have just bombed us from orbit, but he wants to capture our biotechnology intact." The living armor that Maya had given Jake felt strange but wonderful. It enhanced his strength and speed, and he could feel it healing small cuts and bruises, automatically. More importantly, it seemed to connect him to the Zalani around him. He could sense their emotions and even catch glimpses of their thoughts. "The shuttles will land in the valley beyond those rocks," Jake said, pointing to the obvious landing zone. "If we can get there first, we can set up an ambush." "What about the children?" Maya asked. She was wearing living armor, too, and it made her look like a warrior princess from an ancient story. "The children stay here with the oldest adults," Lyra decided. "The rest of us will spread out and make the Imperials fight for every inch of ground." Jake grabbed his converted mining laser and checked the power pack. The weapon was heavy, but the living armor made it feel light as a feather. Remember, Imperial soldiers are trained to fight in formation. If we can break up their groups, they'll be much easier to handle. The first shuttle touched down with a roar of engines. Jake watched as armored soldiers poured out, their weapons ready. They moved with military precision, exactly like Jake had been trained to move years ago. "Here they come," Jake whispered into his radio. The Zalani had spent the last few hours preparing the battlefield. Maya's biotechnology had transformed the landscape, creating hidden passages and defensive positions that looked completely natural. Vines hung down like curtains, hiding warriors armed with Jake's mining lasers. The Imperial soldiers advanced cautiously. They knew something was wrong. The planet was supposed to be empty, but their scanners were picking up life signs everywhere. What they didn't know was that most of those readings were from the plants and animals that the Zalani had awakened. Jake waited until the lead squad was directly below his position, then opened fire. His mining laser cut through their armor like paper, dropping 3 soldiers before they even knew they were under attack. The rest of the squad scattered, looking for cover. "Contact! We're taking fire!" the squad leader shouted into his radio. All around the valley, the Zalani emerged from their hiding places. Their weapons were fewer and less advanced than the Imperial guns, but they had the advantage of surprise and knowledge of the terrain. Maya directed the battle from a central position, using her connection to the living plants to coordinate the defense. Vines grabbed Imperial soldiers' legs, causing them to trip and fall. Bioluminescent plants flashed bright lights that confused the enemy's night vision equipment, but the Imperials were professionals. After the initial surprise, they began to adapt. Their officers called in support from the ships above, and heavy weapons began raining down from orbit. "We can't stay here," Jake shouted to Lyra as explosions erupted around them. "They'll just pound us into dust." "Then we take the fight." "To them," Lyra replied. She had found an Imperial rifle and was using it with deadly accuracy. Jake had an idea, but it was crazy and dangerous. "Can you keep them busy for about 10 minutes? "What are you planning?" Maya asked through their mental connection. "I'm going to steal a shuttle and attack their ships directly," Jake replied. "If I can damage their orbital weapons, they won't be able to support their ground troops." "That's suicide," Maya protested. "Maybe," Jake admitted. "But it's our only chance." Jake used the living armor's enhanced speed to sprint across the battlefield. Imperial blaster bolts flew around him, but the organic technology seemed to predict where the shots would land, helping him dodge with impossible grace. An Imperial shuttle sat unguarded near the landing zone, its crew having joined the ground. Assault. Jake had flown captured enemy ships before during his military service. He hoped this one would not be too different. The shuttle's controls were familiar enough. Jake powered up the engines and lifted off before the Imperials realized what was happening. By the time they started shooting at him, he was already climbing toward the destroyers hanging in space above. "Unknown shuttle, identify yourself immediately," came a stern voice over the radio. Jake switched to a military frequency he remembered from his service days. "This is Lieutenant Morrison, returning to base with captured alien technology," he lied smoothly. There was a pause. "Lieutenant Morrison, you are not on our roster for this operation." "I'm special assignment," Jake said, hoping they would be confused enough to let him get closer. "General Bishop wants to see what I found personally." The lie worked long enough for Jake to get within striking distance of the lead destroyer. The ship was massive, its hull covered with weapon arrays and sensor equipment. Jake knew exactly where to hit it. The orbital bombardment controls were located in a specific section that he had memorized during his military training. Jake aimed the shuttle at the destroyer's weapon control center and pushed the engines to maximum. The shuttle was not built for ramming attacks, but with the living armor enhancing his reflexes, he might survive the crash. The destroyer's defensive guns opened fire, trying to stop the small ship hurtling toward them. Jake twisted and turned, using every trick he had learned as a pilot. The shuttle's armor took several hits, but it held together long enough. At the last second, Jake ejected from the pilot's seat. The living armor formed a protective cocoon around him as he flew through space toward the destroyer's hull. Behind him, the shuttle slammed into the ship's weapon control center and exploded. Jake hit the destroyer's hull hard, but the living armor absorbed most of the impact. He was hurt, but alive, lying on the outside of an enemy warship in the vacuum of space. The armor provided him with air and protection from the cold. "Jake, are you alive?" Maya's voice reached him through the mental connection the living armor provided. "Still breathing," Jake replied. "But I'm stuck up here." "Not for long," Maya said. "Look behind you." Jake turned and saw something impossible. A Zalani transport ship was rising from the planet's surface, but it was not like any ship he had ever seen. It looked alive, its hull pulsing with organic rhythms. Vines and tendrils extended from its sides like arms reaching out to grab him. How is that thing flying? Jake asked in amazement. I have been working on it in secret, Maya replied. Living ships that can heal themselves and adapt to any situation. This is why the Empire wants our technology so badly. The organic ship scooped Jake up with its vine-like appendages and pulled him inside. The interior was warm and soft, like being inside a giant plant. Maya was there waiting for him, her eyes bright with worry and love. That was the stupidest, bravest thing I have ever seen, she said, hugging him tightly. Did it work? Jake asked. Through the ship's organic sensors, they could see the destroyer's weapon systems sparking and failing. The orbital bombardment had stopped, giving the Zalani defenders on the ground a fighting chance. But the battle was far from over. The other two destroyers were moving to attack positions, and General Bishop was coordinating a new assault. The real fight was just beginning. Hold on, Maya said as the living ship dove back toward the planet. We're going to finish this. Jake smiled grimly. He had chosen his side, and there was no going back now. Whatever happened next, he would face it with the woman he loved and the people who had become his family. The living ship landed in the middle of the battlefield like a giant flower opening its petals. Jake and Maya emerged to find the situation had changed dramatically while they were gone. The Zalani were no longer just defending, they were winning, without orbital support from the damaged destroyer. The Imperial ground forces were struggling. The Zalani had awakened every plant and animal on the planet, creating an army of nature itself. Vines tangled around Imperial vehicles, while small creatures chewed through communication cables. But General Bishop was not finished. Jake could see him through the battlefield chaos, rallying his remaining troops for one final assault. The general was a tall, scarred man with cold eyes and a reputation for never accepting defeat. All troops, fall back to Landing Zone 3, Bishop ordered through his radio. Prepare for orbital sterilization. Jake's blood turned to ice. He's going to bomb the planet from space. He'd rather kill everyone than admit defeat. Even his own soldiers? Maya asked in horror. Bishop doesn't care about his soldiers, Jake replied. He only cares about winning. Through their mental connection with the living ship, Jake and Maya could sense what was happening above. The two undamaged destroyers were moving into bombardment positions. In minutes, they would rain fire down on the planet, killing every living thing on the surface. We have to stop them, Maya said. How? We damaged one ship, but there are still two more up there. Maya was quiet for a moment, then her eyes lit up with an idea. The living ship can do more than just fly. Watch. The organic vessel began to change, its hull flowing like liquid. Parts of it broke away and flew toward the remaining Imperial soldiers. Jake watched in amazement as the ship's living technology engulfed the enemy troops, not to hurt them, but to communicate with them. What's happening? Jake asked. I'm showing them the truth, Maya explained. The living technology can share memories and emotions. The soldiers are seeing what really happened here, how their general was willing to sacrifice them, how the Zalani are not the monsters they were told about. One by one, the Imperial soldiers began to lower their weapons. They looked confused and disturbed as the living technology shared the Zalani perspective with them. They saw Arya playing with other children, Maya working to grow food for hungry people, and Jake choosing compassion over orders. General Bishop realized what was happening and drew his pistol. All troops, ignore the alien mind tricks. Continue the attack. But his soldiers were not listening anymore. They had seen the truth about who the real monsters were in this conflict. Several of them actually pointed their weapons at Bishop instead of the Zalani. Sir, we can't fire on civilians, one sergeant said. These people aren't warriors, they're refugees. They are aliens, Bishop screamed. They are the enemy. No, sir, the sergeant replied. I think we are. In space above, the crews of the two remaining destroyers were experiencing their own crisis. The living technology had reached them too, carried by small organic pods that Maya's ship had launched like seeds. The Imperial sailors were seeing the same memories and emotions that had affected their comrades on the ground. Captain, I'm getting reports of crew members refusing to fire, came a voice over Bishop's radio. They're saying they won't participate in genocide. Bishop's face turned red with rage. He grabbed a heavy weapon and aimed it at the nearest group of Zalani children. "If I have to kill every alien myself, I will!" Jake stepped between Bishop and the children, his living armor gleaming in the afternoon light. "You'll have to go through me first." "A human traitor," Bishop snarled. "You've been infected by their alien poison." "No," Jake said calmly. "I've been cured of yours." The two men faced each other across the battlefield. Bishop was larger and had better weapons, but Jake had the living armor and something more important. He was fighting for people he loved. The fight was brief but intense. Bishop was a skilled soldier, but Jake had the advantage of the living technology enhancing his speed and strength. More importantly, Jake was fighting to protect his family, while Bishop was fighting to preserve his hatred. When it was over, Bishop lay unconscious in the red dirt. Jake stood above him, breathing hard but victorious. Around the battlefield, Imperial soldiers were laying down their weapons and surrendering to the Zalani. But instead of taking prisoners, the Zalani offered them food and medical care. It was a kindness that many of the soldiers had never experienced before. "What do we do with them?" Lyra asked Jake. "We let them choose," Jake replied. "Anyone who wants to leave can go. Anyone who wants to stay and learn about what we're really doing here is welcome." Over the following days, more than half of the Imperial soldiers chose to stay. They had seen through the living technology how peaceful and advanced the Zalani really were. They wanted to be part of something better than the Empire's endless wars. Jake and Maya were married 1 month later in a ceremony that mixed human and Zalani traditions. Arya served as their flower girl, scattering bioluminescent petals that glowed like tiny stars. The wedding was attended by humans and Zalani alike, a symbol of the new world they were building together. "I love you, Mrs. Morrison," Jake said as they danced under the alien stars. "I love you too, my brave husband," Maya replied. "But I think I will keep my name. Dr. Maya Moonwhisper Morrison has a nice sound to it." Jake laughed and spun her around. He had never been happier in his entire life. As word of their victory spread through secret channels, other refugees began arriving on the planet. Not just Zalani, but members of dozens of species that the Empire had oppressed. The small colony grew into a thriving community where different races worked together in harmony. Jake's old cargo ship became the flagship of a small but growing resistance fleet. Former Imperial soldiers who had seen the truth joined Zalani crews in rescuing other refugees and spreading the message of cooperation instead of conquest. The Empire declared Jake and the others to be dangerous terrorists, but their message was already spreading. On dozens of worlds, humans were beginning to question what they had been taught about aliens. Small acts of kindness were growing into movements for change. 2 years after that first meeting, Jake stood in a classroom teaching human children who had been rescued from Imperial indoctrination centers. Beside him, Maya taught Zalani children about human culture and science. In the back of the room, Arya helped translate for the younger students. "Uncle Jake," Arya said after class, "do you ever miss your old life?" Jake thought about it seriously. His old life had been comfortable, but empty. He had traded goods across the galaxy, but never really connected with anyone or anything. Now he had a family, a purpose, and the chance to make the galaxy a better place. "Never," Jake said honestly. "This is exactly where I belong." That evening, Jake and Maya sat on their porch watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. The planet that had once seemed dead was now alive with growing things. Children of many species played together in gardens that seemed to glow with their own inner light. "Do you think we'll really change the galaxy?" Maya asked, leaning against Jake's shoulder. "Maybe not the whole galaxy," Jake replied, "but we've already changed this little part of it, and sometimes that's enough." In the distance, Arya was teaching a group of human children how to make the bioluminescent plants glow brighter by singing to them. The children's laughter mixed with the musical sounds of the Zalani language, creating a harmony that spoke of hope for the future. Jake smiled as he remembered that day 2 years ago when he had shared his meal with a scared alien child. He had thought he was just being kind to someone who needed help. He had no idea that simple act would lead to the most important moment of his life. Sometimes the smallest gestures of compassion could change everything. Sometimes sharing a meal with a stranger could lead to finding your true family. And sometimes choosing love over fear could plant the seeds for a better tomorrow. As the stars came out above their peaceful world, Jake Morrison knew that he had finally found his place in the universe. He was home.